both your parents developed what you called, just before the show to me, galloping Alzheimer's.
My father got it first of all, and this was in the 2000s. I had 3 children. I was trying to arrange a Challenge Anneka project in Sri Lanka post the tsunami to help renovate a village, and suddenly the police started phoning me and saying, your father's reported you that you've been abducted by aliens, and certain things went on, and it was suddenly a terrifying thing. My dad was an hour and a half away, and I just spent the whole time up and down.
Was it clear to you immediately that that's what it was?
No, because I'd never heard of Alzheimer's. In those days,
it
a long way.
Yes.
We now discuss it. 1 in 3 of us are likely to be touched by it in some way, so it's out there. But it just wasn't then, and I didn't know where. So he came to live with us because he was on his own while we tried to work out what to do. And my son, one of my sons, was 15 and very kindly had him sleeping in the bed next to him, so that if my dad woke up and wandered around the house looking for Liverpool, he could look after him. And we all got used to it, and we settled into a very sweet thing in the house. We'd walk into the sitting room and he'd go, honestly, look, the queue for the swimming pool and the steam bath. And we'd go, yeah, you're right, it's ridiculous. And then he'd go, look at Valerie Singleton. Mm-hmm. She's been in there hours. And we'd just go, I know, Dad, ex-Blue Peter presenters, they're so up themselves. We got used to it was a bittersweet sort of comedy. So
did he seem quite calm in himself?
He was calm because he really trusted me, especially, to sort it out. And the thing, what you have to do with Alzheimer's, you don't go, oh, Dad, don't be silly, this isn't a health club. You're in, you go with the narrative. It's like being on drugs.
Has it meant, because both your parents had dementia, that you have been concerned about yourself? Are you constantly watching yourself?
I think anyone who's had Alzheimer's and seen it firsthand is a bit terrified. I mentioned earlier this project, which we can talk about later, but we did a challenge very recently where we built this dementia village, and every single volunteer, whether they were 20 or some guys came in their 60s, everyone had been touched with a nan or an uncle or an auntie or a sister or brother, and everyone was doing this project, half the time in floods of tears, because we were all doing it for people we knew. It was the most, I love all my volunteers.
Well, I'm extremely pleased that we can talk about this. Obviously, it's an enormously important subject, and so many people
worry. And also, it's so important to talk about all these things because we're all in it.
Exactly.
And if we can just sort of share the support around it, and you just want to give people with dementia
exactly what we're going to do now.
So
don't forget, we're going to be taking your calls on this. If you're worried that you'll get dementia, maybe you're worrying that you're more at risk because you have a family history of it. And I'm just about to be joined, as is Anneka, by top neuroscientists to answer any questions that you might have. Dr. Rittman, it's so good to have you here. I think lots of people like Anneka, particularly if both their parents have had Alzheimer's or dementia, think that there's a very much increased risk that they will inherit it, that it's hereditary. Are they right to worry?
Yeah, well, thanks for the invite. It's lovely to be here. First of all, very, very nice setting. I'd love it if my clinic was like this.
Well, it could be.
I should come and redecorate it. If we were doing a Challenge Anneka project, we'll come and
do it. I'd love that. So, well, I think I can be partly reassuring. Unfortunately, dementia is common. So by the time we reach the age of 80, somewhere between 1 in 3, 1 in 6 of us will have dementia. So actually it's not that uncommon for us to have 1 or 2 parents or uncles, aunts, people in our family with dementia. So if you do have both your parents with dementia, actually your risk of developing it yourself is a little bit higher, but only by a few percent. It's not inevitable that you'll develop dementia.
All right, so people watching, and I know there'll be lots who think, well, my mum had it, my dad had it, my auntie had it, so it's definitely going to be me. It's not true. It may well not be you.
No, it may well not be you.
Okay, well, that's a good thing to know.
That's good news.
That's a good thing. So Anneka's now holding hands with the doctor. She says she fits in anywhere. She's a shapeshifter. She definitely
I'm now in the Alzheimer's. No, but there's a very lovely connection because I'm involved with Alzheimer's Research UK, who fund Tim's work.
Okay, well, this is great.
But I didn't know until we
The calls,
chatted.
I'm not surprised, are coming in thick and fast. I knew they would on this because so many people very concerned with excellent reason. Let's go to Shelley in Surrey. Shelley, hello. Thank you so much for ringing. It's good to talk to you. I know your mum has recently had a diagnosis of dementia. So what would you like to ask Dr. Tim?
Oh, thank you for that. Yes, she has. My mum's just turned 90 and her mum also had dementia and she was in hospital with that. So it's just a little bit concerning that, this might be hereditary, and if there's anything that I can do to control it or I don't know, not necessarily prevent it, but...
Excellent question. OK, let's plunge right in and see what Dr Tim can tell you.
Yeah, I think it's a real concern, and thanks for bringing that up, Shelley, because I think a lot of people in a similar situation, I can reassure you that when we do see people rarely where there are genetic forms of dementia, there is a dodgy gene in the family which is passed down through the generations, but there people develop the disease when they're in their 30s or 40s. So the fact that your mum is in her 90s is way past the age that people develop those genetic dementias. The other good bit of news is that actually you can do some things to reduce your risk of developing dementia. So one of the things we often say is what's good for the heart is good for the head. So things like looking after your blood pressure, reducing the salt in your diet, keeping fit and active are all good for reducing your risk of dementia, making sure you don't drink too much alcohol. Actually, there's other things like being social and talking to people is good for your brain. And there's a few other risk factors we're just learning about over the past few years. So hearing, for example. So if you think there might be a problem with your hearing, it turns out that is a risk factor for dementia. But that's something that can be fixed. You can get hearing aids, get hearing tests. So there are a few things that you can do to try and reduce that risk.
Can I jump in and ask something? Shelley, I hope you don't mind. I've heard and read, I think in lots of different places, that if you do something that really challenges and tests your brain, for example, if you couldn't drive, learning to drive a car, if you don't know how to work a computer, learning how to work a word processor or whatever it is, that kind of a thing, or learning a language, or learning a new game, like chess, if you don't play chess, that will help. Is that true?
What those things probably do is make your brain more resilient to dementia. So dementia is a set of different diseases. So you may well develop the disease, but we know that people don't develop symptoms until sometimes 10 years after the disease actually starts. So doing all those things are good for making the brain resilient and helping you cope with those early stages of the disease.
Is it even true that doing something like, putting the other shoe on first, kind of reversing the... I've read this, I don't know, the things that you normally do, but doing them differently, breaking the pattern, Is that a thing that might make a difference?
That's not one I've heard of, I'll be honest.
I love the thought of you getting dressed in the wrong order.
I think you shake it up. If you shake it up, you might sort of, get out of bed the other side. Let's go, Shelley, thank you. Let's go to Jenny in Kent. Hello, Jenny. You've just had a diagnosis of functional neurological disorder. Thank you so much for calling. That must be a worrying diagnosis. Let's go straight to Dr Tim and ask about that one.
Yeah, so functional neurological disorder is different from dementia. So it's quite common, actually. So a lot of people have this diagnosis, and I see a lot of people in my general neurology clinics with it. It can affect your memory, but in a slightly different way. So
let's just ask Jenny. Hi, Jenny, because we haven't heard from you yet. What made you go and get the diagnosis in the first place?
Hello. Because my memory was going, and my hearing, and loss of my limbs, use of my limbs, and I was just wondering if it's dementia. I know now it's FND, but will I have dementia because I've got this?
Good question.
Yeah, that's an easy answer to say. No, actually, they're not related. So people who come to and see me in the memory clinic, the most common diagnosis we make is Alzheimer's disease as a cause of memory problems. Actually, the next commonest is what we call attentional memory problems, which is part of that functional neurological disorder you talked about, where in the moment when you've got lots of life stresses, your working memory is taken up with all of those other things. So the working memory is a bit like a bucket, and it can hold on to things for a short period of time. And stress, anxiety, worry, just general life can shrink down that working memory bucket and make it difficult to remember things. So that's what's happening in functional neurological disorder. It's very different from dementia, where you're losing brain cells, and that's the cause of the memory problem.
I do hope that makes you feel a little bit better, Jenny, and I'm glad you called. Lots of love to you. Thank you. Let's go to Derek in Derbyshire. Hello, Derek. You have a sad story to tell. Good afternoon to you.
Yes, I'd like to ask the doctor. Yeah, I'd like to ask him. Hello?
Hello, yes, we hear you. You're talking loud and clear.
Right, I'm talking to the doctor. Well, the wife died last July with dementia, and she'd had it 10 years. Now, before she got it, her mother, her two aunts, her half sister and 4 first cousins got it. Now, when we went to see the consultant regarding dementia, I asked him outright, is it hereditary? And he said no. And the other thing is, she was in a home 3 years. I couldn't look after her any longer. And in that home, there was 40 people in that home, and more than half of them had got dementia, yet some of them were only in their early 60s. Now, this old chestnut about you only get it, people's getting it now because they're living longer. I am 13 months off 90, and in my early days, in my late 40s, 50s, 60s, in the coal mining village I live in, I nearly know everybody in here. They never, you wasn't, you didn't hear people say, oh, so-and-so's gone dual alley. There were no such word as dementia.
Let's give Dr Tim a chance to answer, because you're asking many questions. So the first one was really about, is it hereditary? Because his late wife had so many relatives who seemed to have dementia. So maybe in that family, maybe it was the faulty gene one, do you think?
Well, usually where there is a faulty gene, people are developing the disease in their 30s or 40s or early 50s at the absolute latest. So if the people in your family were developing it in their 70s or 80s, that's less likely to be due to a single faulty gene.
And what about the home where Derek says there were all these people with dementia in their 60s?
Yeah, well, it's not uncommon. So I run a specialist dementia clinic in Cambridge, and because of that, we get referred people who are sometimes in their 50s or early 60s, and they have dementia. So it is not just an old person's disease. I think Derek makes a really good point.
Yes, Derek, thank you so much for calling. Really interesting to talk to you, and obviously my deepest condolences on the loss of your wife. Let's go to Darren in the West Midlands. Darren, you're worried about this. Tell the doctor what you're worried about.
Hello, yeah, I am worried because I'm the one who got my mum diagnosed because she went missing for hours, and I took her to the doctors, and we found out she's got mixed dementia. But then we've found out recently my birth dad has got dementia, and my mum's husband now, who's my stepdad, he's got dementia. And I'm worried that, it could be hereditary. I don't understand what the mixed dementia is. I know she's got what they've said, it's Alzheimer's and the vascular dementia. But they said it's mixed. I'm worried because I'm the youngest of 3 boys that, 1 minute we were told that, like the other gentleman, we were told that it's not hereditary. And now you're saying it could be hereditary. It's a faulty gene. But isn't there a way that as a family member can find out if there is a faulty gene and if we are likely to have it? That's what worries me more than anything, because I've got children of my own. And I don't want it passed
thanks,
to them
Darren.
as well.
So can Darren find out whether it is or is not hereditary?
So the way that it would need to be approached, firstly, you'd need to talk to the people who have made that diagnosis and talk to them about the risk of this being hereditary. I'm really sorry to hear there's so many people in your family affected by dementia. That's very hard as a family to deal with. If your mum is in her 60s or older, it's actually very unlikely to be a single faulty gene that's causing that. It's not uncommon for people to have that mixed dementia with Alzheimer's disease and vascular disease, dementia together, because all those risk factors we talked about which affect the heart and the blood vessels can cause Alzheimer's disease, but they can also cause hardening of the arteries, and that's what causes the vascular dementia. So it's quite common for those to come together. It's actually very unusual for that to be a genetic type of dementia. But there are lots of different types of dementia. So Alzheimer's disease is the commonest. Vascular dementia is another one. There's one called frontotemporal dementia, which affects behaviour, and there's dementia with Lewy bodies. So there's lots of different types of diseases which all come under this umbrella term of dementia.
Well,